what are some of the maybe contemporary business ethics or issues there that we might deal with? Yeah, we have a diverse society, right? And maybe few shared values. I mean, we like to talk about all of us being American and whatnot, and we are, but we're an extremely diverse society. I would think by far maybe the most diverse on the planet, and those are difficult, right? Decline in public education and the family structure, again, things that we've already talked about, right? Interdependence and the news media, right? So that's why often then we have government step in, right? So the government steps in and investigates Wells Fargo because Wells Fargo wasn't doing things correctly, and it hurt a lot of people. I think employees probably more so than customers, but certainly some of each, and so the government steps in. After the recession of 2007, we just had a raft of regulations and whatnot, right? Right now, however, we're going with this administration a little bit in the opposite direction. We had, after the recession, of course, just a raft of regulations that came down. We had Dodd-Frank, which was a law that set up new regulations. We had the Affordable Care Act, which set up a whole new regulatory environment, on and on and on, right? And right now we're going through a process of deregulating or getting rid of some of those, and we'll see how all that works out. I'm probably the first one to jump up and say, I'm not in favor of a lot of regulations, but I'd have to also say that there's a lot of regulations that do good, and best yet is when you do get some self-regulation. But when that fails, the government definitely steps in. Paul Harvey had said, and you guys don't remember Paul Harvey, that's unfortunate. He was great. He was a radio talk guy and gave great when he worked out on the farm, during harvest and whatnot, and as busy as it was, no matter how crazy the work was, at noon when Paul Harvey came on, everything shut down and we listened to Paul Harvey. And one of his quotes was, "Self-government won't work without self-discipline," and how true is that? Yeah, 2009, I know that's a while back, but nearly 50% of employees reported observing ethical misconduct. The truth about that, though, is what's not ethical and to what degree. It's one thing if you're swiping notepads maybe from your employer. Your employer maybe wants you to take those anyhow because they have advertising on it, versus doing some things that are horribly unethical, like the Wells Fargo things that were going on, right? So what's the nature of ethics? First we have morality, right? And those are the values, the things that we've grown up with, the things that we've learned, the things that we've inherited from our family, friends, et cetera, et cetera. Businesses have to be sensitive to that, okay? And we're going through some changes in that in our society today. I would say, I'll give you an example. After the Charlottesville thing that happened here just a few weeks ago, there were a lot of business people who excused themselves or decided they didn't want to serve on the president's council or whatever he called it of advisors, and they apparently thought they had good reasons, right? And so in this case, this was a case where government may not have been sensitive to, but I'm telling you that businesses were sensitive to those moral and ethical issues, and that's why they did what they thought was best, I guess, at that point in time. Okay, and I think we're seeing more sensitivity to some of those issues, and I'm not going to tell you I think that's good or bad necessarily. I like businesses that are socially responsible and do things correctly and properly, but I'm not so sure I like businesses that bend to the will of a vocal, even if it's a majority. I don't know. Again, that's everybody. You kind of have to decide that for yourself based on some of the things that are happening. But my point in bringing that up is just telling you that it is changing dramatically. So, and then law, right? Law is the basis, the root. What do we learn in the first chapter, right? That we're a nation of laws. Okay, we find that to be extremely important, and we set these laws up, and we follow those instead of following people and what they change, right? It can be an external motivator. That's important to note, right? An external motivator, something outside of your own person that motivates you to do things properly. Your church or those types of things can be an external motivator. The culture and those things that you were raised in, okay? But what you have internally is internal motivation, right? Law sets minimum standards for behavior, right? Two systems of ethics be important, of course, that you know these and kind of know the difference, right? So formalism affirms absolute morality. So I sometimes liken this to the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that, thou shalt not, it's absolutes, okay? And I think that formalism, to me, I can define it that way, right? That ethics involves duties, okay? That there would be no reason to ever bribe somebody because bribery is not appropriate, right? It's not moral, nor is it ethical, okay? And a categorical imperative means that, we're just absolutely, you got to do those things, right? In a social contract, okay? It's associated with deontology. I don't think I asked anything about deontology. Consequentialism is more concerned with what happens, right? Oops, sorry. And that says that we're more concerned with the end result. So, if we bend a few rules along the way, but the end result is good for people, it's maybe okay. Okay, and we see examples of those things. Walmart got called onto the carpet here a few years back, mainly because of things they were doing in Mexico. They were paying bribes, maybe to local government officials and whatnot, to set up stores, do those types of things. Well, again, that's a consequentialism thing, and it's something that whoever was down there, they didn't trace it back, I don't think, to the leadership at the U.S. headquarters or anything, but you bring maybe a lot of good to those towns, communities, those types of things by opening up a Walmart store there, and certainly to people in U.S. and manufacturers that'll be supplying those things, and was it worth it then maybe to pay those bribes and whatnot? Well, that, if you're a consequentialist, you would say, yeah. If you're a formalist, you would say, no. I mean, bribery's wrong, period. It's always wrong, no matter what. Okay, and so a little difference in how you would look at things. So let me pause for just a second here. Okay, I wanted to get back and make sure that I wasn't missing something, and in this case, dealing with the deontology and the teleology. Well, what those mean are just basically the same as this. It's basically a synonym. Deontology is a synonym for formalism, and teleology is a synonym for consequentialism, right? I'm going to get back here to the categorical to imperative, and in that it talks a lot about, it's almost like the golden rule, but changed a little bit. It says, act as you want others to act. Has to do with that formalism, and the social contract deals with what we have in society and how we deal with things when we have inequality and those types of things that happen in the society that we do have. So just hopefully to clear up a couple of things. So again, here we go, things that we would look at, in formalism, again, there's an absolutism and the morality of the action, right? Consequentialism is there's relativism. In other words, is this relatively okay? Something relative to something else may be, right? And you'd look at the morality of the action, and you might say that, we might bend a rule in order to come to a resolution that's good, that ultimately is good. Philosophers call the end result of the ethical examination the good, the bad, the ugly, or the rule of law. In this case, it would be the good. Right? Is there a relationship between law and ethics? The answer is absolutely. Are they the same? No. And Lanny and I have had this argument. Is it ever ethical to break the law? And I said, well, absolutely, that it's ethical to break the law. I've done it on a number of occasions, perhaps. And one's a long story I would tell you about back in my banking days, maybe other times in my banking days, and you might cringe and go, oh my God. Well, believe me, it was, you get put into those situations, and I'll tell you this about your professional careers. You're going to have ethical dilemmas that present themselves through no action of your own. You're going to wake up one morning, you're going to go to work, and here's going to be an ethical dilemma, and you didn't bring it on yourself. And all of a sudden now you have to make decisions about that. And sometimes those are really, really difficult. But my example that I always gave to Lanny was this. I said, if I were out at the ski hill and my son were injured severely, okay, and he needed medical attention, okay, would I break the law by driving too fast to try to get him to the hospital for treatment? Absolutely. It's a breaking of the law, but in my opinion, at that point in time, it would be ethical, to do that. That would be something that I would pursue, right, and want to do. And that, that might be a little bit of the difference between formalism and consequentialism, right? I might deem that sure, breaking the law, speeding is supposedly never correct, but there might be some exceptions to that. And let's pause there, or we'll take a break and start up again here in a bit.